Hello, I'm Haslinda Amin in Bangkok. It looks like another tough year for the Bank of Thailand. A strong currency, slowing growth, interest rates at record lows, so not much room to move, and geopolitics are not helping either. This is a conversation with Veerathai Santiprabhob, the governor of the Bank of Thailand. Governor Veerathai Santiprabhob, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start with the Thai baht. What a spectacular rally in 2019, up almost 9%, the best performer in Asia for the year. It's also caused a huge headache for the BOT, prompting the bank to intervene. How comfortable are you with the level of the baht right now?
Well, there have been quite a number of factors that have contributed to the movement of the Thai baht. We have said lately that we think that the movement of the Thai baht is not in line with the fundamentals of the Thai economy. The baht has appreciated too much in 2019. There were also factors related to financial flows from outside Thailand into Thailand when there were changes in economic conditions and financial conditions in the global financial markets. For instance, when there was a change of monetary policy stance of the advanced economy central banks, and that contributed to more spillover flows from large economies into emerging market economies, and due to Thailand's external strength, and that has led to some inflows. We saw that phenomenon happening mainly during the first half of 2019, and that prompted the Bank of Thailand to step up certain measures to look at the flows and to make sure that non-resident flows will not create too much movements in Thai baht. So we tightened up some of the non-residents holding of baht accounts in Thailand. During the second half of the year, we saw the speculative flows or the flows of speculative nature subsiding a bit. But it has been driven by large current account surplus and also by foreign direct investments into the country. But all in all, we think that the baht has appreciated too much. People might say that it has been the best performing currency in Thailand. We're not happy about it. And indeed, when the currency is not moving in line with the fundamentals of economy, it should not be considered as the best performing. It's not performing in a way that we would like to see.
You talked about how the baht is not reflecting fundamentals. At what baht level would fundamentals be reflected?
When we talk about the movements of the currencies, we're not targeting any particular level, but we look at the dynamics of the changes. When we compare the movements of the Thai baht with the movements of regional currencies, for instance, or currencies of other emerging markets that have similar stages of economic recovery, the baht has appreciated a bit too much.
You're not targeting a level yet. Khun Khanit of the BOT did say that you will defend 30. Is 30 the line in the sand?
Khun Khanit is not speaking on behalf of the BOT. Khun Khanit is a member of the Monetary Policies Committee. It might be his personal view.
So there is no line in the sand?
No, there is no line in the sand. We look at the movements. We have the floating exchange rate regime, and we look at different factors contributing to the movements of the baht.
So would you allow the baht to appreciate beyond 30?
Well, it's up to the conditions, because if you look at the one of the factors contributing to the movement, not only of the baht, but of emerging market currencies, it has been largely driven by the value of the advanced economies currencies, like the value of the US dollars, the value of the Great Britain pounds, the value of the euro, and that have contributed to the movements of the exchange rate of emerging markets. So we have to look at the whole context of factors contributing to exchange rate movement when we have the floating exchange rate regime. Obviously, when we see the movement, if it's too fast, that we're not happy about it, or if it's out of sync with the movements of other currencies in the regions or other trading partners or competitors of Thailand, then we'll be very concerned about it.
You talked about being concerned about speculative inflows. Are you prepared to implement measures like a holding period to prevent speculative inflows?
There could be many measures that we can implement, and we continue to keep those measures on the table.
What are some of these measures? What's still in the toolkit that will allow you to rein in?
Whenever we want to deploy it, we'll let you know.
So that's on the table. How about, recently you implemented measures to allow the easing of capital outflows.
Yes.
Are you prepared to do more of that?
Yes, definitely. That's one thing that we will continue to do more in 2020. When we say that the movements of the Baht has been contributed by structural factors, I think there are two structural factors that we have to look at closely and have policy responses. One is the structural factors in terms of the current account surplus. Although our current account surplus has come down from about 11% of GDP to about 6% of GDP, it continues to be quite high. And we have to step up investment because corporate investment has been low. Public investment has also been low as a result of the election and the changing of administrations that we had last year. By stepping up investment, private and public investment, that should help narrow down the current account surplus. So that's one set of policy measures to deal with the current account surplus, the structural factors contributing to the strengthening of the baht. The other factors, which I could also consider it as a structural factors, is the fact that we don't have a mechanism to recycle the foreign exchange inflows out of the country. If you look at other countries that also have large current account surpluses, they have institutional investors, for instance, the like of life insurance companies, pension funds, that can recycle back by investing abroad, recycle foreign exchange out of the country. And Thailand needs that. And we see the government pension fund is doing more about it. We have liberalized the like of mutual funds wishing to invest abroad. We have increased the ceiling substantially from 100 billion US dollars to 150 billion US dollars. We have allowed Thai individuals wishing to invest abroad can also invest directly by themselves without going through intermediaries in Thailand. We have allowed exporters to basically leave foreign exchange earnings outside the country.
Governor, it is finding a balance. Thailand runs the risk of being called a currency manipulator by the US.
I think no one should consider Thailand as someone who has tried to manipulate our currencies for trade advantage.
Governor, it is finding a balance. Thailand runs the risk of being called a currency manipulator by the US, which is due to release its list soon. It was delayed from October. Mm-hmm. How real is the risk of being called a currency manipulator?
We're mindful of that report, and we have been in close dialogue with the US Treasury. But if you look at the movements of the Thai baht during last year, I think no one should consider Thailand as someone who has tried to manipulate our currencies for trade advantage.
But Thailand meets 2 of the 3 criteria. And if you take a look at the trade surplus, since 2014, Thailand's trade surplus with the US has exceeded $20 billion. And by that alone, Thailand qualifies.
We're still waiting to see the final number. The official trade bilateral trade surplus number hasn't come out for 2019. It has always been below 20 billion, the benchmark, but it has getting close to the 20 billion benchmark.
Can you share with us the discussions with the U.S. Treasury? How are you, fighting the case for Thailand?
Well, firstly, the Thai baht has appreciated the most as compared to other currencies. And although we have to come in and intervene in the foreign exchange market from time to time, but those have nothing to do with manipulating the currencies for trade advantage. That could be because of the receiving too much spillover inflows when they're changing in the global financial condition as a result of global economic and financial developments or geopolitical concerns. We have been in good dialogue with the U.S. Treasury.
What might be the implications on the Thai economy should Thailand be labeled a currency manipulator by the US, given the scenario of a US-China trade war right now, given the impact on exports and slowing PMIs?
Yes, according to that particular law, the law that governs this currency manipulation, I think the law allows a period to have a dialogue on how we move ahead by not intervening too much in the foreign exchange market or having a better understanding with the US Treasury. But in the current environment of trade tension, we have to also need to be mindful of other possible consequences that might be driven by geopolitics. So we have been very mindful of that risk and make sure that we do not breach the criteria.
Governor, I'd like to move on to monetary policy. You cut rates twice in 2019. What's the scope for further rate cuts?
The Monetary Policy Committee has a data-dependent approach. When we look at monetary policy objectives, obviously we have flexible inflation targeting framework. So inflation is a primary objective. We also look at the growth, economic growth, whether it is in line with the potential of Thailand economy. And we also pay attention on financial stability risks when interest rate has been low for too long. So we have to look at these three objectives when we make a policy decision. As of now, inflation has been below our target range, and the economy, the growth has slowed down to be below our potential growth. Financial stability concerns continues to be at a level that we can't be complacent with, and we have to keep our eyes on closely. Although we have deployed some of the macro-prudential measures, but there are other shadow banking activities that we have to keep our eyes on. So we use the data-dependent approach, and we look at all the risk scenario involved, and particularly now when there are more risks in the global economy, particularly with the recent tension between the US and Iran. So although the policy rate is historically low now at 1.25%, if the economy doesn't perform according to our forecast or our projection, the Monetary Policy Committee has said it clearly that we stand ready to deploy more measures.
You touched on the US-Iran tensions. We've seen how the Bank of Korea deciding to meet to discuss that. The Bank of Indonesia decided to intervene to stabilize the currency. How closely are you watching developments between the US and Iran, and what may be the repercussions for Thailand?
Well, we have been watching the situation very closely, and this is one of the biggest risks that we pay attention on now. Firstly, it could affect oil prices, and Thailand is one good thing. It is an energy-intensive country. We import a lot of oil, so we're very sensitive to oil prices. And for every $1 of Thai GDP, I think we consume more energy than other countries in the region. So we continue to watch impact on oil prices closely. Tourism sector is also a very important sector in Thailand. If the tension gets escalated into a war, obviously it would affect transportation. It would affect the tourism industry, and that could have serious impact on the Thai economy.
So how would a spike in oil prices impact monetary policy?
It won't. In a short term, I don't think it will change the current monetary policy stance. We will continue to keep monetary policies, accommodative. Although we have inflation target, but as of now, the headline inflation is below our target range. So we're not, in the situation whereby that inflation will pose a threat for Thailand medium to long-term growth. And when we make policy decisions, we also look at the real cost of inflationary development. If it's because of the supply shock and it has contributed to a more fragile stage of the economy, we don't need to respond by increasing the rate.
Is it reasonable to think that 0.5% is your lower band target simply because commercial banks have to pay that much from deposits into the financial crisis fund?
When you look at the transmission mechanisms in general, when you talk about the effective lower bound of monetary policies, for emerging market economies, we don't think the effective lower bound should be zero. It's somewhere above zero, and obviously when the rate is getting close to zero, or comes down to a very low level, the transmission mechanisms might not behave in the way that a central bank expects.
Just how encouraged are you by the US-China Phase 1 deal?
It's difficult to predict, being an election year of the US president.
Governor, given the initiatives in your longer-term plan, are there plans to run for a second term as the governor of the BOT? These are unconventional times, and central bankers are tapping unconventional means and policies. Not too long ago, zero rates and negative rates are unthinkable, but that's being considered by central bank around the world. Under what circumstances would you consider that? And how would QE possibly look like if you need to go through QE in Thailand?
By lowering the rate to where it stands now at 1.25%, when the economy continues to grow at about, in the range of about 2.5 to 2.8. That's our forecast for this year, about 2.8%. I think that could also be considered as unconventional or non-traditional. It doesn't mean that we won't do more if need be. But if you look at the liquidity in the Thai financial system, at this point we have ample liquidity. And indeed, the Bank of Thailand, we have to mop up a lot of liquidity out of the system because of excess liquidity.
Mark Carney has sounded a note of caution. In fact, he said that central banks may find themselves in a liquidity trap, unable to respond if crisis were to occur or if a recession were to take place. Your thoughts on that?
Well, in the case of Thailand, we have monetary policy space, although much more limited than we used to have. But we also have a lot of fiscal policy space. If you look at the size of public debt to GDP, is in the range of about 43 to 45%.
But how willing is the government in disposing?
No, I think the government is very willing. If you look at how the budget has been prepared and also the large-scale infrastructure projects that are in the pipeline. Last year it was unfortunate because we had an election early in the year and it took quite some time before the new administrations could be formed. So the budget has been delayed, and the annual budget that was supposed to begin on October 1st of last year will now become effective in February of this year. So that the fiscal engine that has been taken away from last year economic growth momentum, but this year we should expect to see more activities, more impact coming from the fiscal engine.
But despite that, growth was cut to 2.8%. How confident are you will meet that target, and what's the biggest risk to that estimate?
I think the biggest risks are from out of Thailand. The trade tension, although it seems like China and the US have reached in the first phase of the agreement, but who knows? This is an area that's continue to have a very high degree of uncertainties going down the road. And now we have this geopolitical tension between the US and Iran. And this could have impact on the global economy, the global trade volume, and then Thailand being a small open economy, we will continue to be affected by global development.
What are the early signs from the export numbers, and just how encouraged are you by the US-China Phase 1 deal? How soon can we expect exports and PMIs to recover from that signing?
In our projections, we don't expect to see any fast recovery of PMI, particularly on the manufacturing exporting sectors, we might benefit from the decline of stocks. If you recall, going back to 2 years ago when we all first heard about the trade tension and the big package of tariff that would become effective on April 1st of 2019, I mean, everyone was stocking up before then. Stocking up intermediate goods, finished goods, hoping that they would have enough stock so that they would not be subject to the new set of tariff when the new set of tariff became effective. During the first quarter of last year, exports continued to perform well. Towards the end of last year, we started to see some indications that stocks of certain products might have come down slowly, and I think that's also well reflected by the fact that PMIs in some advanced economies and also even in China started to pick up in certain industries.
So in your view, geopolitics will be the biggest risk of the global economy right now? I mean, it's great that we have a phase 1 deal if and when it's signed, but phase 2 would be problematic and that could impact sentiment, both in the markets and among investors.
Yes. And it's difficult to predict being an election year of the US president. I mean, that will continue to add to the complexity of this trade negotiation.
You've been in the position for, well, your 5-year term ends in October. As the Central Bank Governor in September, what's been the biggest challenge for you in your position as the Central Bank Governor?
I guess the volatility that of the global financial market, definitely that was one of the biggest challenge for all central bank governors during the past 4 or 5 years. And being a governor of a central bank of a small open economy, we have to deal with a lot of spillovers from abroad, while making sure that we have enough cushion so that the economy as a whole doesn't get distracted by developments outside of the country.
Governor, given the initiatives in your longer term plan, are there plans to run for a second term as the governor of the BOT?
Well, the selection process or the nomination process will probably start in March.
Would you be interested?
I guess I'll make my decision when the process begins.
Would you be interested?
I'll make my decision when the process begins.
Have you been approached? In conclusion, Governor, 5-10 years down the road, how do you envision Thailand's economy to be?
A lot of changes are taking place around us, okay? And 5-10 years down the road, the environment that we operate in will change at a much faster pace than the last 5 to 10 years. And we need to make sure that the productivity, agility, and adaptability of the Thai economies will be strengthened over time. And I think this is the only way to ensure that we have the economic structure that fit for the environment 5 to 10 years down the road, and everyone can also benefit. So I think I always say is that 3 words that we have to pay attention to: productivity, inclusivity, and also immunity, because we will continue to face with a lot more volatility in the global economy.
Governor Veerathai, Santiprabhob, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.